Well, welcome everyone to Showtime's Power Hour session for March 21st. Jim Dent is our presenter, and he is certified by the International Coaching Federation, or ICF, as a leadership team coach. He's been in Toastmasters since May of 2010, and he has successfully coached more than 12 clubs using the principles from ICF and Toastmasters club coaching. So in tonight's Why Become a Club Coach session, Jim will share some of what he's learned while coaching clubs and what he's learned from others as to why club coaches might fail. So please help me welcome our presenter tonight, distinguished Toastmaster Jim Dent.
Okay, welcome everybody. As she said, I am an ICF leadership and team coach. I originally got my coaching more than 10 years ago, and a few years ago, I renewed it and upgraded it. So it was more current, and that it takes about 180 hours to do that. And I've used the principles from ICF coaching in combination with the principles from Toastmasters and coaching clubs to successfully coach clubs. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. I don't know why it's doing that. Well, the agenda is we're going to first talk about the difference between coaching, mentoring, and teaching. And then we're going to talk about the top 5 reasons why many club coaches fail. And then what should your focus be for coaching and developing leadership skills? Because it takes leadership skills to coach a club. And then what changes are coming to the coaching program come July 1st. The board of directors is implementing some changes, and we'll just talk about that. So first, we're going to talk about mentoring versus teaching versus coaching. And they do have a little bit of overlap, but they are quite different. So first, mentoring focuses primarily on an individual and their technical skills. In Toastmasters, this may include how to perform meeting roles, how to craft a speech, how to find a topic to speak on, or how to navigate pathways, or understanding the educational and leadership programs in Toastmasters. And that's just a few things, but you're focusing on an individual when you mentor. Teaching is very much like mentoring, except it involves a group of people. As you know, club officer training is teaching. Typically, club coach training, any type of training event that the district holds is a teaching event. You may be a new club that's just chartered, has a club mentor. So you're teaching the club, but you may also be mentoring individuals privately. So with a new club, it may be a combination when you're mentoring that. But it's basically any group educational training session. Coaching, on the other hand, is employing your empathy and emotional intelligence. You're working more on people's attitude and thinking process rather than teaching skills. Coaches are curious and ask questions that help others see things about themselves. Coaches typically don't tell people what to think about. They ask probing questions and let the client or club or members come out with the ideas. They don't dictate the outcomes or actions of others. They focus on the individual's attitudes and thinking process. And they also realize every individual is different. There's no magic formula to address individuals. And we're going to talk about this further. In Toastmasters, this includes being a club coach, coaching an individual in the club, your communication style for specific situations with individuals or within a club. Same with your leadership style for specific situations. Addressing a personal conflict. Individuals could have different personal conflicts. So that's why you have to be very careful what style you use. And then how to reflect on your own actions and thoughts, which you should do every time you interact with somebody or the club. So any questions on that or discussion? Feel free to ask questions right now.
Probably there is just a comment that I feel that coaching is really difficult because when people they have many activities in mind that they could do, sometimes they mix thoughts and feelings and they are not really coaching.
Yeah, and we'll talk about some of this stuff in why coaches fail. So next, we're going to talk about the eligibility of a club. A club must have between 3 and 12 active members in good standing. Now, the 3 comes because every club has to have 3 continuing members from the previous dues period to be viable. If you don't get 3 members to continue for the next dues period, the World Headquarters won't allow you to continue after a while. You'll be suspended. Even if you have 10 members, you'll get suspended because you don't have the minimum required. Sandra.
So to charter is different. First, you have to charter to have, and you have to have 20, right?
Yeah, to charter, you have to have 20.
And then the next dues period, you only have between 3 and 12 members. So you're gonna, if you lose some,
A
but
lot
you
of new
go
clubs
below
lose some
12, are
members.
you okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
but you have to have 8 to be considered in good standing. But you need 3 so you can get a coach, because you have to have 3 continuing members. The club must not currently be suspended. You can't coach a club that's already been closed and suspended. Right now, the club requests the club coach. This process. Now, a lot of clubs don't want to request a coach. They either fear a club coach or they don't know what a coach is, or they think they can do it themselves and they don't need outside help.
I have a question.
Yes. Maria, did you have a question?
Yes, with the second point, is this point related with the when a club is I forgot the word, when they have many goals, I forgot the word. When is recognized very well.
Distinguished?
Yes, distinguished, that's
Huh.
the word. Is this second point related with distinguished club?
Well, that's one of the goals you have to do is bring the club up to distinguished to get credit as a coach.
But
And
Jim,
that could be 20 members, or it could be their base plus 5 members. So they could grow by 5 from their base, which is what their base is established on the 1st of July. Bobby, did you have a question or point?
yes, I just want to
Thanks.
make sure, Maria, for the second point there, are you clear on what it means to be suspended? Because that's something that Toastmasters International does.
No, not really.
Okay, Jimmy, can you elaborate on that?
Suspended is when World Headquarters closes a club and they're no longer a club.
But temporarily, they're open. When they're suspended, there's still a club on the books, but if they don't get their membership up, then they're no longer a club. Isn't that right?
Yeah, they could be suspended. Like I know one club is going to be suspended on March 31st. They're already not meeting. They've already been told. They've already submitted the suspension papers. And they've done everything. And they're going to be suspended officially on March 31st.
Okay, thank you.
Which is typically when World Headquarters will suspend on the last day of the dues period. And then the club just no longer exists. You can't join it. You can't reenact it. All you can do is if those members could go join another club, or they could charter a brand new club. Okay. So moving on, mentoring, teaching versus coaching, sometimes they're in conflict with each other. And mainly it's because sometimes people don't understand the difference. So they work them together. Their reminder is mentoring and teaching focuses on technical skills and developing those skills, and coaching focuses on non-technical skills, their attitude, and their thinking process. So any more questions on that before we move on? Maria?
No,
Okay.
thanks.
So the next topic we're going to talk about is why club coaches fail. And a lot of coaches do fail. And I've collected from different surveys on Facebook, talking to people over the last 2 years about why, talking about ones that failed and probing into why they think they failed and listening to some of their comments. One of them is, a lot of them focus on the deadline and credit only. You have until July or the end of June to get the club to distinguish. And some people focus on that and they panic about this time of the year with April dues. And they're doing it because they want that credit for the DTM this year. Well, as those deadlines approach, they get into a panic mode. And that defeats themselves. So they have an attitude problem themselves. They're using an authoritarian leadership style rather than, picking the style that suits the situations. They're using one, they're becoming a dictatorship. They become the figure of authority. And they basically make enemies of the club then. They fail to develop a rapport with the club members. They may develop a rapport with 1 or 2 people, but not with all the members. So they're not using empathy and emotional intelligence wisely, which again, each individual is different. And that's a challenge. There's no magic formula to do that. You've got to just figure it out yourself by talking to individuals. And then they tend to dictate what the club should do. I mean, I recently talked to a person that actually, after just a month, gave up on coaching the club. She said, well, the first meeting I had with the club, I told them everything they needed to do. In the next 3 weeks, they didn't do a single one of those things, so I'm quitting. I'll never coach a club again. Well, that's not the right way to go about it to begin with. And so we're going to talk about some of that stuff later too. And then, like I said before, each individual is different. So you really need to understand each individual's problems and what their issues are within the club. And that requires you have to talk to them privately. You don't talk to them within a club setting because they won't be free to say what they want to say. They may feel intimidated, not wanting other people to hear. Now, some people think the path to success is a straight line when you're coaching a club. It's not. It goes all over the place. Sometimes you're reversing, you're going backwards. And so that's why it's important to always reflect back. Did you do the right thing? Did you really understand what's going on? Are people understanding? Are they receptive? And that's where all the leadership skills come into play. And it's, again, there's no magic formula. You have to take it one meeting at a time and then figure out what your next action is. But you got to try to keep the club going in a positive direction. And you got to keep your own attitude in a positive mood. Success is a series of small steps. It's not one giant leap. And with each step, you'll see this little circle that says PDCA, and call it that's plan, do, check, and act. So every time you do something, you planned it, and then you do it, and you check, did you get the results you expected? Or do you need to go back and make adjustments and act on it again? And it's a continuous cycle. So any questions on this section?
Yes, please. I'd like to know what is the meaning of those words, A.
Okay, it starts with P. It's plan,
Okay,
then
thank you.
do the plan. Check, is the plan working? It's like called an after action review. Did it work the way you expected, or it did not work? If it didn't work, then you make adjustments and you replan it again and you do it again and check it again. You go around until everything works.
Okay, thanks.
Bobby,
Again, what is A?
A is adjust or act.
And Jimmy, is that something from the ICF principles?
It's from the ICF, but it's also in the quality world.
Oh, okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I'm a quality professional too. Okay, there's nothing else. We'll move on again.
Can you wait a minute? Can you
Okay,
bring that up again? Okay, can you go through how it changes? So you first start off with the ACSD,
yeah,
right?
that's just basically it's from a previous step. You've acted, you made adjustments.
Can you give us a real life example of just one circle, starting at the
Okay.
bottom?
Yeah, I mean, you may plan to have a brainstorming session with the members of the club. So you plan it, then you conduct the brainstorming session. And people turn out to be either not receptive, they may be criticizing ideas that people come up with, or people just may be totally quiet and not come up with ideas. And that's where you're checking how this is working. So maybe your approach of how you did this is wrong. Maybe you didn't give them the proper instructions. You didn't give them the proper freedom to express their opinion and make sure that nobody criticizes. Maybe you didn't facilitate it correctly. So you look at why it's not working, and then you make those adjustments and you try it again. And you may have to do it 2 or 3 times.
And
Bobby?
Jim, did you say the S is for step and then the P is plan?
Actually, I don't know what the S is for.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was.
SDCA is
I can't
standardized.
remember,
do-
so I apologize.
Jimmy, if I may say,
Yeah,
SDCA is standardized, do, check, and act.
that's what it is, standardized. Yeah, I was trying to think. Thank you. Okay, is that all?
Yeah, thank you. That helped.
Okay, then we'll
Yes.
move on. Okay, so this is the guts of this. Why become a club coach? Well, you do it for the DTM credit. Most people say they're doing it for the DTM credit. Now, I'm going to say that's wrong. You should be doing it to learn and practice leadership skills. What are you in Toastmasters for? You're here to practice to give speeches. You may be here to practice leadership skills. Coaching involves a lot of different leadership skills for you to practice and learn those skills. The result will be you'll get DTM credit. That's not why you should be doing it. That's my philosophy. Sandra.
Sorry for the puppies, but I have a question.
Yeah.
If you are a club coach and you're going through all of these projects to be a coach and help the club, is there a path that you could be using in Pathways to kill two birds with
There
one
actually
stone?
is an effective coaching path. But there's also a lot of electives and other paths that could be applicable. And I'm going to list those shortly. So the emphasis is your focus should be on learning and practicing leadership skills. And unlike doing a project in a path, a lot of times those are hypothetical situations. Coaching a club will be real life situations. And they'll have conflicts. So one of the leadership paths or leadership courses is understanding your own communication style, which if you read the project, it emphasizes that there's a different communication style that's most applicable for different situations. So it's good to really understand all those and choose the right style for particular situations. And then understanding your leadership style. Don't use just one style. Think about which one's the best, most appropriate. Other ones are active listening. And these are all Pathways, electives, or mandatory projects. Understanding emotional intelligence. Understanding conflict resolution. You're going to have conflicts. That's one I would always recommend. Emotional intelligence is good because everybody's got different reasons why they don't do things. They've got different problems. They could be problems in a club. They could be personal problems. So, and this is emotional intelligence where you really get to employ empathy. And you kind of look at things from their side. Managing change. That's what you're going to be working with. You're going to try and manage change within the club. Improving through positive coaching. That's always the thing to keep in mind. You want to be positive, not negative in your coaching. Leading your team. The club is your team. Or it may be a group of members. And how to motivate others. It's really building an environment where they are motivated. You can't actually motivate somebody, but you can create an environment where they self-motivate themselves. And there's more. There's leading difficult situations. This is a project where you have people hypothetically disrupt the meeting. But in coaching, you may have that for real. And people seriously interrupt and they don't play along. So that's an important one to learn because a lot of the projects you do in Pathways are just hypothetical. How do you communicate the change? Again, that's back to the communication style. You've really got to understand all the individuals when you communicate a change. Managing the difficult audience, managing successful events. You're going to have successes. You want to manage them. You don't want to just brush them under the rug. You want to make sure you highlight successful events with the club. You may want to moderate a panel discussion with the members of the club. So learn how to do that. Understand ethical leadership. You don't want to be unethical, and you also don't want to make sure members of the club are being unethical. So that's a whole group of Pathways projects that can help you in your coaching. And you don't have to do all of them, and you don't have to do them for credit. You can just read through the project manual. Just download the PDF and read through it and understand the principles. And if it's in a path you're working on, you can take credit for it. If you do something, but it's knowledge. And that's the important thing where you're going to learn the leadership skills. Any questions on that? Okay, I'll move on then. Developing leadership skills. Well, the role of the club, we're going to talk about the role of the club coach. And this is from Toastmasters directly. You want to develop a rapport with the club leaders and members. You want to develop a rapport with everybody. Now, do you know what rapport means? I've talked to people that really don't know what rapport means. They just said that, well, they agree with you, what you say. No, it's where they trust you. You know, if they don't trust you, you're going to fail. You're not going to be able to get anywhere. So you got to gain their trust. And in doing that, I always recommend, and this is my personal thing, is observe the club and the members for about 4 weeks. Don't try to take any action or make suggestions to the club. Observe it. See how consistent people are. See who the people are that are active positively and see who's negative. See who seems to have an attitude problem. See who's a regular member of the meetings and see who only occasionally shows up. You just take personal notes and try to figure it out, and then you start talking to people individually. And some of the questions you might ask them is, what do they like about the club? What don't they like about the club? What changes would they like to see in the club? Or what changes would they not like to see? Or what would they like to keep the same?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
When you make this question, like, what do you think about your club? In particular, these kind of questions are made for the guests in our club. And I found that those people, they answered those questions, they didn't come back. So there is something wrong with the questions that we are doing.
Well, did you ask them in the club meeting?
Yes.
Okay, well, when I say ask the members, is do this privately with each individual, maybe over the phone or a one-on-one Zoom meeting. Try not to ask questions in a club setting because people typically aren't open. They'll give you the answer that you maybe want to hear and the answer that the rest of the members want to hear. So they're not as honest as when you talk to them privately.
Okay, thanks.
You want to facilitate the club planning goals for improvement. You don't want to dictate the goals. You want to have this, again, facilitating a discussion. Have the club decide what they want to have as goals. Now, I have a suggestion of how to do that, which is using MOT as a survey, moments of truth. And I'm going to cover that here. And then you facilitate the implementation of the plan. Remember, facilitate, let the club do things on their own, make their own decisions. When the club makes the decisions, they own the decision. If you tell them what to do, you own it, not the club. And that's one of the reasons sometimes the problems with club coaches is the coach tells the club what to do, so the club doesn't own the solution. And you want to facilitate instilling enthusiasm, loyalty, and a sense of responsibility with the members. And that's why you need to talk to them individually, is find out what their issues and problems, what they like, what they don't like. And even the questions you ask may be depending on what they tell you to begin with. So you may not want to just go with a standard set of questions. You may want to just listen to them and then develop a question as you talk to them to probe deeper into their thoughts. A rapport is a harmonious relationship between people who have established mutual trust. Mutual trust is that thing. You have to trust the members and the members have to trust you. It's not just a few members, but every member in the club has to trust you. And that's building rapport. And that's what Toastmasters teaches in club coach training, is developing that rapport. And that takes time. It doesn't happen after the first meeting. That's why I say you observe for several weeks and you work on developing rapport before you start making suggestions or telling them anything or trying to do activities. One thing I always tell people is just like football or any other sport, coaches coach from the sidelines. They don't get into the game. So I always recommend, and it's my personal, is don't join the club. Don't become an officer. You coach from the sidelines. Let the members play the game. And you coach and guide them and facilitate them. I recommend observing the club meetings for 3 to 4 meetings. And if they have a club officers meeting in that meantime, attend that and observe that. See how they're operating as a set of officers. And I always say do it 3 or 4 meetings, because one meeting, you may look at one meeting, that may be a bad meeting, it may be an off meeting, it depends who's running it. So you want to look at how consistent the meetings are being run. After 3 or 4 meetings, you may see they're all consistent or they're randomly different depending on who's running the meeting. Sometimes there's really experienced Toastmasters and functionary roles, and sometimes there's not. So that may be one of the problems. You have to observe to figure out what the differences are and inconsistencies are. And in those meetings, you may start to see different attitudes of people. It also gives you time to see who's a regular attendee and who only shows up once or twice.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Observing those meetings, those club meetings, if you are participating as a speaker, so probably you are just worried thinking that you are presenting your speech, but in some sense, you are not completely observing the club meetings. What is the recommendation?
When I coach a club, I don't give any speeches.
Okay, thanks.
What I do is, if I want to present something to the club, I work with an individual that I've developed a rapport with and convince them to give the presentation.
Okay, thanks.
And we'll practice that presentation, and they'll listen more to that person, but that person learns then. So they're conveying the information I want to convey, but I'm not doing it.
I have a quick question here.
Yes.
So my sense is, if you're working with the club as a club coach, you're more likely to work with the executive team, which is the president and the VP of education and the club officers. So the idea of working with the other members or having a report, can you just elaborate how that works? If you in Zoom meetings, you're not really meeting them in person, can you elaborate on having a report
I
with other
meet with
members?
individuals either by phone or by one-on-one Zoom. And I've seen a mix of things. I've seen where the president is who requested to coach, but by observing, it's the president that's the problem. Sometimes I've seen it where it's the members of the problem. Nobody wants to sign up for roles. So the only people signing up for roles are the officers because they can't get the members to sign up. So that's what you want to observe. You want to understand who the officers are, who's signing up for roles, what's consistent, what's inconsistent. I've seen clubs where, a lot of these clubs were in-person clubs because I've been doing it for the past 11 years. You have a lot of people chatting among themselves during the meeting. It's a very open, chatty group of people. Sometimes I've seen where there's cliques. And there's only certain people that talk to each other. They won't even talk to the guests. So, you want to see what it is. I've seen clubs where, as in-person club, everybody arrives 5 minutes before the meeting starts. And as soon as it's over, they leave. And a guest is left hanging. They got nobody to talk to after the meeting. and they barely have time to talk to anybody in the beginning, and they wonder why they're not attracting members. So that's why you want to observe what's happening. And if you're lucky enough that some guests show up, and you can always have some of your friends show up as a guest, so you can see how guests are treated.
Right.
You know,
Now,
you can always plant those people in there to find out how guests are treated.
Thank you. Quick follow-up. Do you adjust the way of coaching based on the club
Yes.
status? Say if it's a corporate club versus an open club.
I adjusted according to the problems in the club. I don't think a corporate club is any different than an open community or a special club. I mean, the club's either operating as a well-organized team or it's not. So I address those problems where the issues are. And I don't think it's tied to a corporate club or any other type of club. Bobby?
So when you talk about addressing the problems of the club, then are you saying you would use like moments of truth as kind of the
I'm going to actually
standard?
show a moments of truth here, how I do it
Okay,
shortly. So it's actually my next bullet. Assess the club using a moments of truth survey. And I'm going to show you what the survey looks like. It's 36 questions because in moments of truth, there's 6 categories and each category has 6 characteristics to it. And you can make each of those questions. And you want the members to answer them quickly. Don't think about it. You want them to answer it. You want to answer privately, not have a discussion with each other, and just whatever's off the top of their head. And there's no discussions or comparing answers. And the first thought that come to mind is what's important. And it's simple yes or no questions, no ranking of scores or anything like that, just yes or no. And I always tell people, don't be afraid to answer. If you don't know, just put down DK. You don't know. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, let me see. You want to understand the members' personal goals. When you develop a plan, you include the members' personal goals in a success plan. Now, this isn't the official Toastmasters success plan. This is a coaching success plan. So if you don't know what the members' personal goals are, you're not going to have the club helping that member achieve their goals. And that could be one of the problems. You could have members that have personal goals that the club really isn't helping them with. Keep the plan simple. Don't make it complex. And base the plan on the weakest results of the MOT survey. And I'll get into some results. This is one. So what it is there's 6 sections. And this was a score that I gave to a club in August. And the red ones they scored below 50%, they're red. If they scored below 75%, they were yellow. If they scored above 75%, they were green. Now, each of these categories had 6 questions. So I'll go over one of these, which we're going to pick membership orientation because that was really low, 33%. And here's what it was. There was only 6 members in the club at this time in August. Nobody agreed that there was any kind of formal induction ceremony held for new members. Only one person felt members were assigned a mentor. Nobody thought the educational program was discussed with new members. Now, this included new members. New members' needs and goals are assessed. Only half the 6 people thought that was true. New members are assigned meeting roles. Only half the people thought that was true. New members are involved in club activities. Only 2 people thought that was true. 9 months later, in February. These were the scores. Now we worked on these because when you go back to these are fairly simple. They don't cost money. They don't cost a lot of people. They're simple things to attract, to work on. And the club decided how to work on them. I didn't tell them what they needed to work on. I just presented data and said, what do you think we need to do? And that's why I said, you know, let the club decide. And I even said, what do you think we need to work on first? And how do you think we need to work on it? Let them make all the decisions. When they make those decisions, they own the thing. And when they own the solution and they own the ownership of working on it, this was a result 9 months later. Now, at 9 months, they had 18 members. Now, that didn't happen in the first 4 months because it took them a while to get this stuff going. But once they got it going, people that visited stayed and they joined because they had these good scores in all these categories. They had a good first impression. They had good membership orientation. They had good fellowship and variety. They had good program organization, membership strength. This was the scores after 18. All 18 members basically answered they thought it was good in this one category, which was the membership orientation. So they went from several members think, you know, none of the 6 members said yes to all 18 members saying yes, it's there. Now I'm going to stop sharing this one. I want to share another screen. This is what my survey looks like. So I have a simple survey. They answer yes or no, and they can put DK in there if they want. I also ask, are you currently a club officer, or have you joined the club in the last 6 months? Now, if it's not one of those two, then they've been a member for more than 6 months. So I don't have to ask them that. It's by default. But one of the things I've seen sometimes is a difference in the answers between the officers and the members, because they have a different perception. Officers might think we're having friendly and fun meetings. The members may not think that. Or they may think we have a nice guest package and the members don't think it's a good guest package. So sometimes you'll see a few items that there's a big difference between what the officers think and what the members think. And then I have another page. This is the initial survey to the club, which is one I did in August. And so you can see each one of these is scored for each member. Each one of these members, this is a member. I don't keep track of the names. And then I present the scores and stuff to the club. And again, I simply ask them, you know, where do you think we need to work on? And I try to keep it, say, let's work on, choose something to work on that's simple to work on, doesn't take a lot of people, doesn't take a lot of effort, and you can probably begin implementing within 1 or 2 weeks. Because you want to keep that simple. There's some of these could take very long to do and very complex. So you want them to pick what's called the low-hanging fruit. And you only work on one at a time. Don't try to get them to work on 6 or 8 at one time. Work one at a time, get a few people to volunteer, and then when it's successful, celebrate that success. Again, that's where you want to, you know, any success, celebrate it because that encourages people. And then this page is what happens later after 6 months and the results. And you can see almost all of these, some of them are still a little low. They weren't at 20 clubs yet. They weren't at 20. So we're not at 20. You're going to score 0 all the way across this. here. But for the most part, they worked diligently on this because they owned it and they come up with good scores. The only one that was a little low yet was not all the members were preparing for assignments. And evaluators, not all the evaluators were giving positive feedback. So the club still has some work to do. So where these are low now, the club has some new ideas to bring these up to 100%. So here one, they felt the meeting room is not conveniently located. So some of the members, 3 members, felt it's not a convenient location. That may not be resolved, but I mean, that's only 3. So it's still a good percentage. Let me go. Go ahead, Sandra.
Are you willing to share that spreadsheet with us?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
I'll put it in the chat at the end of the meeting.
So I have still, I'm a data guy. I'm interested in knowing, we said when you do the survey, sometimes there's a discrepancy between the club officers' answers versus the members.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile those two, and when you provide the report to the club?
Well, again, I look at it as, again, you got to look at this situation. How different is it? Is it significant different or is it a subtle difference? And I keep that kind of really privately. I don't publicize it to the club because that could create hostility. Again, you want to keep the coaching experience positive and you don't want to point fingers at anybody. So you keep that to yourself. Typically, I will share the spreadsheet with the members so they can analyze it. Like you said, they want to look at the data, but I give it to them so no names are on there and no roles. That's kept private. So the benefits of being a club coach is you get to develop, practice, and improve the following skills. You know, reaching a consensus, that's a Pathways project. You're going to be doing that with the club. Everybody's not going to agree to the same thing. So you got to facilitate everybody accepting something. And consensus means they don't agree, but they can live with it. So they may have a different professions, but they can get to a point where it says, okay, I can accept that. I can live with it. We'll go with what so-and-so or these other people say. They're not strongly against it. That you may wind up situation where you may have some people that are strongly against something. And in the project, it discusses that it may take some time to reach consensus. You want to negotiate the best outcome. There's another Pathways project. Understanding emotional intelligence. Again, you know, some people may have a bad attitude because they've got something personal going on. It has nothing to do with the club. So that's what you can maybe reveal in a private conversation with people. Understanding conflict resolution. How do you resolve conflicts? You will encounter conflicts and they're not going to be hypothetical. How do you develop collaboration between the members? That's a Pathways project. Active listening, I mentioned earlier. Leading difficult situations. Developing a vision. Now, you want the club to develop a vision. And it's not, well, we want to be distinguished by the end of the year. That's a goal, not a vision. You want to look down the road 5 years. What do you want people to think about the club? You know, that's what you want to get them to focus on. If the club had a reputation, what would that reputation be? What would people think of the club 5 years down the road? Or what type of club does the members want the club to become? You know, what do they want to be known for? Maybe special evaluations. Maybe they want to be known for special type of speeches, storytelling speeches, something. Ethical leadership. That should be managing, not managing. That's a typo. But these are all pathway projects, and you don't have to do it as a project. You can read the project descriptions and understand how to practice it. And again, the key word is practice, because it may not work the first time. You learn how to facilitate discussions and decisions and goals. Again, the key word is facilitate. Don't dictate. Don't tell them what to do. Facilitate a discussion where they're making the decisions. Learn to ask thought-provoking questions rather than telling people, well, here's what I think you should do, or did you think about this? Ask a question like, what do you think you should do? You know, and they may, I can't think, well, just think of something and let that plant as a seed, and you spin another question off of that, but without leading them into an answer you want them to give you, because you want them to own that thought process. And sometimes you're just helping them to think and draw probably what they already know. They're just not bringing it up to the surface of their mind. Learn to provide resources for them, and maybe where to look things up. You know, you may want to, if you're going to have a conflict resolution or brainstorming session, you might provide them some resources to read to understand the process before you try to do it, rather than spending a lot of time explaining it. Or there may be resources, maybe public relations resources, ideas for public relations, but you can just give them the resources and then let them read it or research it and come up with ideas. Learn to interpret the individual behaviors. That's your emotional intelligence and empathy. Learn to choose appropriate communication and leadership styles. Again, there's not one magic style that works for everything. So you need to be able to adjust your style depending on the situation that you're getting involved in. Learn to develop a motivating environment. That's yourself being positive, staying positive. Don't show any frustration. You know, I've seen people in meetings that you can, I mean, it doesn't even Toastmasters, outside of Toastmasters, in a meeting, something's not going right, and you can see they're frustrated and they're showing it. You don't want to do that yourself, because you're going to lose trust, and you're not going to develop that rapport and keep that rapport with people. And you want to look at developing team building skills, because the club is a team. It's not just the officers team and the members team. The entire membership as a whole is a team, is a single team. And you want them to all to work as a single team. And you learn higher levels of empathy. Now, what's the need for a club coach is the membership has dropped to 12 or fewer members. So any club with 12 or fewer members is eligible for a club coach. And right now, a lot of districts have a lot of clubs that are at 12 or fewer members. And sometimes the reason is for the drop is key leaders have left the club that really kept the club together and kept the club organized. And when they leave, the club can become disorganized. That's one of the things you want to observe and maybe ask questions about. That's why it takes 3 to 4 meetings to figure out what's going on with the club, who left, who's remained, who's experts, who are the drivers of the club and how they operate. Are they dictatorships? Are they, you know, which leadership style are they using? And what communication style are they using? Maybe the club's meetings lack enthusiasm, fun, and inviting atmosphere. Yeah, I've seen clubs that they're like very white collar, strict, very formal. It doesn't look inviting. They don't look fun. As far as the club coach requirements, the coach is appointed by the district director. It should be or the club growth director, depending which district you're in. They help the club to become distinguished. And that is either get to 20 members or get their base plus 5 by growth of 5 members above their base. You cannot be a member of the club when you're appointed as a club coach, but you can right now, between now and July, you can join the club if you're appointed as a coach after you're appointed. The club must have 12 or fewer paid members. 2 coaches are allowed per club. Now, when 2 people, well, you got to make sure your style is the same and you're not conflicting with each other, because that'll show in the club too, that you could lose faith. So you got to make sure that if there's 2 coaches, you need to work together and be in sync with each other. That means you probably have to meet privately yourselves a lot and discuss how you're going to address the club and what you're going to do. And the club coach program lasts until June 30th of the current year. However, you can extend it a second year. So if you begin coaching in July, you can actually get 2 years to get the club to distinguished. Although most people want to do it by the end of that year. They want to do it as a 1-year thing. Now, who's a member of the club rescue team is, these are the club rescue team, the club coach, that's the primary person. The club executives, because they're key, but your area director should be a resource that can help you. Your division director should be able to help you. And the club growth director should be able to help you. So you can communicate with them and keep them informed. And they could also be a source of resources. You might have them come in as a guest speaker, especially if the club is looking for speakers, if they're having trouble getting it. Bring some outside people in instead of yourself. Bring somebody in from the outside, fresh faces for them. The 8 essential skills of a club coach is you want to be supportive. You want to facilitate developing the goals for the club. Again, as that word facilitate, don't dictate it to them, facilitate them deciding on what the goals are. Facilitate establishing the impact of those goals. How's it going to help the club? Facilitate developing a plan. The plan is more detailed than just goals. It's how you're going to get to that goal. And you want to confront excuses or resistance to any change or ideas between members. And people are going to make excuses. Well, I don't have time to do this, right? They're going to make excuses for not doing things. So you want to confront that. But again, it creates facilitation. You don't want to get angry with them. You don't want to force them to do something. You want to really listen to them and see what their reasons are. They could have perfectly legit reasons. Everybody's got a certain amount of time they can spend towards Toastmasters. Facilitate developing commitment from the members. And facilitate developing action items from the members. And that's working on one action at a time. Again, if you get them to work on too many actions at one time, I always tell people, if you work on one action, you can spend 100% of your effort on that one action. If you're working on 10 actions at one time, you can only spend 10% of your time on any one of those actions or your effort. So it's not so efficient. And then the other thing is never give up, because things aren't going to go the way you plan. You're going to run into conflicts. You're going to have to back up and start over again at points or change direction. Any comments? We're almost done.
What I would find real useful is to have a chart that has sponsor, coach, mentor as the columns, And then as the rows, what the responsibilities are, because it is a little confusing to me. It sounds like being a club coach is helping a club in trouble.
Yeah, a club coach is helping a club, a coach is helping a club that's in trouble.
A club
That's what it is.
sponsor gets it to charter strength.
That's now a club sponsor is just getting a club chartered.
Say again?
A sponsor is helping get a club chartered.
Right. And
Yeah,
then
that's before they
a
charter.
mentor.
A club mentor is once they're chartered for the first 6 months. It's helping them develop their skills. How to run a meeting, how to craft speeches, how to conduct their roles, the meeting roles. It's usually with new members of that. The same thing happens in an existing club with just member mentor. You're not mentoring the entire club, you're just mentoring an individual. So this is
So-
just on club coaches, which is helping a struggling club
Right.
become unstruggling.
Okay, so starting at the formation of a club, you have a sponsor to help get it to charter strength. Then you have a mentor to get it up and running.
Yeah,
And then a coach is, oh, something's gone wrong.
yeah, and the coach typically is after the first 6 months of a new club. It's not during the first 6 months. It comes later after the club's established and now they're losing members and they fall below 12 members.
Which would you say is the hardest role to be successful at?
I'm
Coach,
gonna say it's a club coach.
mentor, or sponsor?
Well, I'm gonna say club coach is probably the one I
Because
think most
it's in
people
trouble.
fail at. But, getting a new club sponsor can be difficult because you gotta get 20 members to commit themselves.
Right, but you can't be a coach until you're chartered. And you can't be a mentor unless you're chartered.
Yeah, typically you don't get a club coach until after the club's been in existence for at least 6 months.
Okay.
And then only if it drops below 12 members from its 20. Okay,
Well, so I'm sponsoring a club up in Canada, and
okay.
that's a lot of work that I've been putting into it. A lot. I'm also a member of a club in Minnesota that's PR centric. And I'm helping them with all their graphic design and a lot more, all their advertising and things like that.
Mhm.
I'm not helping a club that's in trouble. So in order to get my DTM, which is, 33 years later, it sounds like I'm doing the wrong thing to get my DTM.
There's other options other than DTM. Have you looked at the DTM application form?
Well, I took the
It gives you the choices of
description
what
off
you
of,
need
I
to do.
took the description off of the pathways project.
Yeah, the actual application form gives you the options you have for each of the different leadership roles. And there's other options than coaching a club and so forth. You can probably look it up on just do a Google search for toastmasters.org plus DTM application.
Well, the current description up on TMI says that to be a distinguished Toastmaster, you have to serve successfully as a club mentor or coach
Okay,
and serve successfully as a club sponsor or conduct a speech craft.
yeah. So you're doing the club sponsor now. Once that club is chartered, you can also put yourself down as a club mentor. And you wouldn't have to do coach. Not everybody has a chance to become a club mentor.
Well, I'm doing
They choose to
speech
be a
craft
club
and
coach.
sponsoring.
Yeah, I enjoy club coaching. So I prefer club coaching over any of those other ones.
Jimmy, we're a
Yeah.
little past our time right now. Do you want me to stop the recording or should we
No,
continue?
keep the recording going. I'm going to try to finish this up real quick.
Okay, thank you.
So this is the last thing. These are the changes coming to the club coach program that were dictated or described in the March 2021 board meeting minutes. So I've taken these down there. They supposedly go into effect this coming July 1st, but they are subject to change because they're not official yet. Eligible clubs and prospective coaches may approach the district director to request appointment of a club coach to a given club. So in this, as a club coach, you can say, I want to coach club so-and-so. And right now, the districts kind of tell you which clubs they want you to coach. But they want to make a change where the club coaches can say what club they prefer to coach. The district director may also determine a club is eligible without external prompting and seek a potential coach for the club. And then address the club if they would accept the club coach. Right now, it's like a little different now. Right now, it's a lot of districts, they won't even look for a club coach until the club requests one. But there's really a need where the district leadership really needs to look at what clubs need coaches and then try to find coaches and then address the club that, hey, we've got somebody that wants to coach your club. Let's discuss the possibility of it and how we can work this out to help you. And that's a little more proactive and fits more in the district mission of helping all clubs become more successful. The eligibility of clubs, again, it's still going to be, you have to be between 3 and 12 active members in good standing. The club must not be currently suspended. You must be an active member in good standing with Toastmasters for a minimum of 1 year. So somebody that's only been in Toastmasters 6 months is not going to be eligible for a club coach. You have to be a Toastmaster for 1 year. You may not become a member of or hold any position in the club they are coaching. That's a rule now that the board of directors has set. Of course, it is subject to change, but again, I think they're following the philosophy is the coach doesn't get on the field and play the game. They coach from the sidelines. So you don't want to be a member of the team or a team captain. You want to coach from the sideline because you're coaching the club to be, when the end of the club coaching, you're going to probably leave the club. You may leave the club. You want to teach them how to become successful and sustain that successful themselves without your help. You could not have been a member of that club for a minimum of 6 months prior to their appointment. So you could have been a member of that club a year ago, but you haven't been a member for a year. So you're eligible to be their club coach. And this just prevents somebody from, okay, not renewing in April and then in July becoming the club coach. Only after a few months and just to play the game. I think a lot of people have played that game. You want to be out of the club for a while. And you must have completed either level 2 in any of the pathways or have achieved an ACB or ALB. So again, it's probably not going to be somebody that's only been in for 6 months. You want to have some experience behind you. You must have served as a club officer for 1 program year or 2 6-month terms. So now one of the requirements is you have to have been a club officer. And that's pretty important because that lets you understand how the club executive team works. If you've been a club officer, you've attended executive team member meetings, and you understand the officer roles. You must have completed club coach training, which means your district, your program quality director is responsible for ensuring there is club coach training. Now, I've conducted club coach training in 2 other districts, and I've done that at conferences usually. And you must not be coaching any other club. For example, right now I'm coaching 2 clubs because that rule doesn't go into effect until July. After July, I can only coach 1 club at a time. And so a recap of this whole presentation is we talked about coaching versus mentoring versus teaching. We talked about the 5 reasons why coaches fail. We talked about what your focus for coaching should be. And that should be learning the leadership skills, not just getting the goal. That's one of the top reasons why coaches fail. They're striving for a deadline, and that's all their focus is on, is meeting that deadline. And that can create frustration, and that can show up in the club, and it can play on your own attitude and mental attitude. You want to develop those leadership skills, practice them. This is a great opportunity to practice them in real situations, which are completely different than hypothetical situations. And then we talked about the changes coming to July 1st. So I want to thank you for attending today, and I hope you learned something.
Jimmy,
And I did promise I'm going to put that survey in the chat. So let me do that.
and Jimmy, thank you so much. We really appreciate tonight, all the work you've put into this presentation. We'll go ahead and stop the recording now.
Okay.